Cyber briefing for Wednesday, the 22nd of February. I'm Stephen Ridgway. Hope you all enjoyed your pancakes last night. VMware has patched a critical Carbon Black app control vulnerability. Carbon Black app control is tooling reasonably commonly used to determine what applications will run within a VM environment, or will run in on devices. At the moment, it appears that there is a vulnerability which has got a CVSS score of 9.1 out of 10, affecting app control versions 8.7, 8.8, and 8.9 on Windows operating systems. Basically, it allows the attacker to access the underlying virtual, like the host, effectively the host, the underlying server operating system, if you're working in a VM environment. That's pretty serious. It's one of the concerns going back a very long way, 10 years or more. We've been in discussions with security folks at the time around how secure it was to run things in VMware, and the infrastructure guys, of course, are like, yeah, no, of course it's all segregated, blah blah blah. The security guys go, well, I bet somebody's going to come up with a way of hopping from thing to thing by using the underlying OS, and subsequently they were proved right. Yes, it can be done sometimes. So if you are using VMware's Carbon Black app control, get the patch applied before somebody compromises your stuff. They've also issued an important severity advisory to warn of privilege escalation and information disclosure in its vRealize Orchestrator product. That that vulnerability, the attacker may be able to use specifically crafted input to bypass XML parsing restrictions and lead to access to sensitive information and possible escalation of privileges. So, a couple of patches there to look out for if you are in the VMware world. A few days ago, we spoke about Fortinet's remote code execution vulnerability in their FortiNAC products. So Fortinet disclosed the issue on the 16th of February. It's got a score of 9.8 out of 10. Basically, an attacker could, an unauthenticated attacker would get the ability to write arbitrary files on the system, archive remote, achieve remote code execution with effectively root privileges. So, talked about that a few days ago. Also, I think at the time mentioned that there was a proof of concept exploit on the way. Well, that's been released. So there's a good write-up in the article from Bleeping Computer, which we'll link to this briefing, that goes through actually how that works. You'll be able to pull out some indicators of compromise there. So very much in the arena of, if you haven't patched, if you're running Fortinet NAC devices and you haven't patched them already, begin to think about considering them all, considering them compromised, even if you haven't found it yet. It does look to be relatively straightforward, and the exploit is now kind of freely available. On other matters, interesting article I saw on the Register: accidental WhatsApp account takeovers. You think, well, how can anybody accidentally take over a WhatsApp account? Well, something unbeknown to a lot of people, telcos reuse mobile phone numbers. So if you change provider, or you will change your number with your existing provider, and you stop paying for your previous number, they'll reuse that number. I mean, it makes sense. Well, yeah, I suppose when you take area codes and whatever into account, there is a limited-ish number of potential phone numbers. So there is a possibility then that your phone number can end up being used on somebody else's phone. Now, if you've not deleted your WhatsApp account that was tied to that number, then it is entirely possible that that number will receive WhatsApp messages. So all sounds a bit improbable, but actually, apparently, it has been known to have happened. And the sort of scenario is, if you're working in one country and then you permanently move to another country, well, you're almost definitely going to give up your phone from your first country. Um, so there was a WhatsApp user in Switzerland. Um, who moved to Paris, got a French phone number and a new SIM card, um, and found that his Swiss number was reused and actually did get compromised in that way. So just be kind of just one of those things to be aware of, because I don't think people would really think that one through. I certainly wouldn't necessarily have thought that one through, although I'm like a Luddite and have kept the same phone number for more years than I care to remember. Um, But yeah, so think about that one. If you do have things, it would also affect stuff like SMS-based 2FA, I guess. Although that will be less useful because if you have got somebody else's, if you're using a recycled phone number and a text message appears, you're not going to know. I don't think all of the other components needed in order to use that, but you don't really want this stuff floating around. So don't worry unduly about these things, but park it um, in that place where you keep your worries about SIM swapping and other bits and pieces. This one could just happen, whereas at least SIM swapping, somebody has to go to some trouble to try to compromise your phone. Interesting one. So there has also been a lot of talk over the last year or so about what happens to encryption in a quantum computing world. NIST, good people at NIST, a lot of good stuff coming out of there. But there is a public key encryption and encapsulation mechanism, which was recommended by NIST in July of last year for post quantum cryptography. Um, this has now been broken. A team from the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, Sweden, have used recursive training AI combined with side channel attacks and have broken the encryption algorithm. Side channel attacks, by the way, just in case you're not aware, they're things like they're measuring it's taking advantage of measurable information which is not directly attacking say in this case the algorithm that you are trying to break. So it could be things like power consumption. It could be looking at the timings of things. There are various ways in which, and we've spoken a little bit about some of these side channel um, attacks, previously. Very interesting area. Um, However, deep learning based side channel attacks have overcome, as they say in the article, overcome conventional countermeasures such as masking, shuffling, random delays, and you know, constant weight encoding, code polymorphism, random clock, and so on. So that's an interesting one. A lot of thought about will quantum computing uh, mean that encryption is obsolete? And I think the answer to that is no. But I don't think many people have been thinking about whether actually the real threat comes from AI rather than quantum computing. So yeah, want to keep an eye on. I'm fairly certain, though, that what we'll see as a consequence of this is a whole load of people with very large brains will be now working on ways in which you can encrypt stuff that is both resistant to quantum computing attacks and to AI, and will take into account things like side channel attacks. But I quite like that one. It's not going to have a impact on the lives of people for a while yet, but it is something just to keep in mind. As a general point, which I think a lot of people sort of lost this in the mists of time, but all encryption can be broken. Um, so if you're sending encrypted or data, or if you are storing things, encrypted at rest, the time taken to break the encryption needs to be longer than the value life cycle of the data that you're encrypting, if you see what I mean. So if you've got a piece of information which is vital today, but by tomorrow the event will have happened and it doesn't matter anymore. You only need a encryption algorithm that will withstand 24 hours worth of, say, brute force attack or whatever it might be. If, however, you're trying to protect, state secrets or whatever, well, those need to remain secret for years. In which case, you need to have much stronger encryption algorithms, and you need to also think about the fact that if you've encrypted stuff with one algorithm and that algorithm then gets compromised, you really need to go back and re-encrypt the data again using a stronger encryption algorithm. It is an endless game of chasing your own tail with this stuff. So yeah, so that was I found that quite interesting. And finally, then, from me today, um, there there are some rather dramatic headlines around the Supreme Court ending social media as we know it. Um, But actually, underneath that, there is a very interesting question that's being asked here. Right now, social media platforms are treated like publishers of information. So, you generally there are protections against suing a publisher if the content is not under the control of the publisher. See what I mean? It's like, can you sue your web hosting company? Sorry, could I sue your web hosting company if you post something defamatory about me? Well, no, I can sue you because you said it. Or potentially, probably couldn't actually, but there you go. But you know what I mean. But the platform underneath is considered neutral. Right? There are 26 words which people are discussing again now. They were written in 1996, and basically it underpins this concept that social media companies can't be held legally liable for what their users publish on the platforms, which I think in 1996 was probably true because it was generally a blank canvas at that point. Why this has come back round again, and why it's at the Supreme Court in the States, is that the social media platforms are no longer neutral and haven't been for a while. And if you think about it, it very much they write algorithms which promote particular posts, video clips, whatever it may be, into, they target you with stuff based around what have you looked at before, but they're also collecting a vast amount of information about your demographics. They probably know how you vote. They will have a good idea, what your gender is, what your age is, where you live, whatever it might be, and they're using all this stuff. As we all know, they're using this stuff to target stuff at you, but they're promoting. Their algorithms are automatically promoting particular articles or particular pieces of information. Um, some of that stuff is illegal, and the current discussions in court are around some promotion of ISIS and terrorism, which apparently some users' accounts have had this stuff recommended to them. So, if you are in that arena, the algorithms are not going to work out for themselves whether they should or shouldn't be promoting these things. If they exist, they'll probably promote them. But because of that, it's not possible to say, or the argument is, it's not possible to say that, Facebook or Twitter or whatever is neutral in this arena. They've brought this stuff to your attention, not you've gone out and found it. So, if the court cases finds that the protections against taking legal action against the publisher actually can happen, that's going to very seriously change the way that social media works. So I think that's going to open a I think it's going to, whatever happens, is going to open a can of worms in this case, because we've seen that social media platforms are very bad at deciding what should or shouldn't be, basically banned, shadow banned, cancelled, or whatever it may be. Left alone, they make some very strange decisions about this stuff, and they reflect, and actually, I suppose quite rightly, they're private companies; they can have their own views on whatever they do or don't want to publish. So, at that level, yeah, all right, that's fine. But if you could sue them because you found something that it might be potentially illegal, or it might be defamatory, or your whatever, I think that will make them much more censorious about the stuff that they allow to be published, and it's going to blur the line between what's illegal and what they just don't like or might be worried might end up in a court case, which potentially would have a very serious effect on free speech in social media. So I'm going to be watching this one because I think this is fascinating. If if the Supreme Court rules that the 1996 wording can be overturned, you can bet you there's going to be a barrage of multi-million-dollar lawsuits that follow on from that. So we'll have to see where this goes. Anyway, I've overrun. So I shall stop at this point. Thank you all for listening, and I'll speak to you again tomorrow.